Haven't even spent 2 minutes thinking about it. Maybe
That's
not
how
good.
we always do.
Just off the cuff, improv.
We're at our best.
It's fun. Coming up on tonight's episode, we are back talking about the NBA, this time on the East Coast. We're going to go through half the league, and we're going to end up picking Matt a new NBA team. Stick around. It starts right now. This is Up for Debate, episode number 194, recorded December 23rd, 2020. Hello, everybody. Welcome to this episode of Up for Debate, the podcast where the two hosts agree on everything. I am Sean Jennings, joined as always by our resident all-star, 3-point shooting contest champion, Matt Mariani.
How's it going there, Sean?
Great. Never better. With the NBA season has kicked off. Basketball is being played. Never a better time to be a fan of the National Basketball Association.
Sean, I discovered something today about the NBA. Do you know, now, disclosure for all of our listeners, I've never actually watched a full NBA game in my life. I know next to nothing about basketball. That's why we're picking my favorite team today on the show. Sean, did you know that there is something in the NBA called the Sixth Man award?
That's right, Matt. That's right.
This is an award for the most valuable. I haven't spent any time looking it up. I just heard it on a podcast. Is it the most valuable bench player?
Essentially.
Is that what it is?
Essentially.
Right now.
And it's
Sixth Man award.
yeah, and it's an exciting award because you're right. It essentially is the best non-starting player, and they pick one in the league. But usually, historically, whoever the sixth man of the year is, it's a big boost for their career because they had been a bench player. They get recognized. It's usually a good opportunity to highlight somebody who may go to another team and start or something like that.
Yeah, that's wild. As far as I know, there's nothing like this in any other sport.
Yeah, it's true that basketball has the smallest starting lineup, if you will. I mean, in like football, it'd be like the 56th man, or, in baseball, it would be the 13th man or whatever.
Is it always a player that wins this award, or sometimes do they decide to go for
just give it to a fan?
Yeah, exactly. Like they go for this year's sixth man is this kid who's got cancer. Like some kind of really inspirational story. No?
And
firefighter who saved 13 kids.
This is why, Matt, you need to be in charge of in charge of sports, because I can absolutely imagine you being like, and this year's Super Bowl MVP is this dog, and everyone would be like, what the fuck? But he's a good boy, and you're like, what the hell is wrong with this guy?
This kid who learned all of his math and got a free pizza from Pizza Hut.
And when he was on Book It?
Yeah, love Book It.
Yeah, absolutely. But that was
actually
back.
Filled out a survey for Book It, by the way.
I think Book It was probably the last time I ate inside of a Pizza Hut. Was when I had a Book It certificate as a child. Can you even eat inside of Pizza Huts anymore?
No, not as I have not encountered one. So I'm going to go ahead and say no. You probably can't.
I mean, do they still have the buffet and the parlor?
Nope. I think they did away with that. I went to one with Phil, maybe 8. Our mutual friend Phil, 8 years ago. But I'm pretty sure they've discontinued. You can't eat at any more Pizza Huts.
Was it the one in Poughkeepsie?
Yeah, it was not in Poughkeepsie. It was close by though.
Just north in that plot. I know what you're talking about. I think that's the last restaurant I went into that still was using, those dark red plastic cups with that pebble texture on the outside that a bunch of restaurants had in the 80s and no one has anymore, but somehow this Pizza Hut still had them.
Yeah. Where you can't really see what is in your drink. It's all completely obscured.
And it's an immediate sign that this is a bad restaurant. Yes. Yes. I ate there once as well. Yeah.
To me, that's the classic Pizza Hut experience. The classic Pizza Hut experience is actually, to me, is going to the Pizza Hut bar.
Yeah.
Getting all the accoutrements that are in the buffet, and then concluding with a dollop of chocolate pudding that always inevitably gets onto your pizza. Did you ever have the chocolate pudding at the Pizza Hut buffet?
A big controversy, a big embarrassment. I never did the buffet.
Wow.
I've never in my life done a pizza. I don't think I've ever done a pizza buffet,
Sean,
period.
you missed out.
I wish
They
I
had
did. It's a
legit-
brilliant idea.
very legit dessert section. Chocolate pudding. They had a cinnamon pie at one point, which was basically like a dessert pizza. Oh, yeah. It's a damn shame they discontinued it, but it was probably not very profitable, would be my guess. They probably wasted a lot of money. Probably got a lot of people sick too. But
yeah, that's what Pizza Hut's good for. This episode, by the way, brought to you by Pizza Hut. No one out pizzas the Hut.
No one out pizzas the Hut.
That's right. Matt, we've got half a league, the Eastern Conference, to get through tonight. Let's take a second here and recap what we did last week if people didn't listen. You narrowed down the Western Conference to 3 teams. Do you remember what those teams are?
I do. I remember it was, of course, we had the New Orleans Pelicans.
Yes.
We had the LA Clippers.
That's right.
And we had the Phoenix Sun? No. Not Phoenix Suns. No, of course not.
No, it's very musical team.
The Utah Jazz. Yes.
That's right. Somehow you managed to pick 2 teams that either are in or have been in the city of New Orleans. So, congrats.
Yep, and one team with Jazz in the name.
That's right. Right. Formerly of New Orleans. But Matt, we're going to narrow the Eastern Conference down to 3 more teams, and then we're going to jumble the 6 teams together, and you're going to pick one to become the ultimate fan of. Are you ready?
I'm so ready. I am. I've got a lot of questions. I've got a lot of opinions already, so I can't wait.
Well, that's great. And we're going to start with what is arguably our hometown division, the Atlantic Division, and start with your Boston Celtics. One of the winningest teams, actually, I think maybe the winningest team. They're tied with the Lakers to be the winningest team in the history of the NBA. 17. Believe it or not, Matt, they've won about 25% of all NBA championships since the league's founding. Kind of incredible. Obviously based in Boston since 1946, playing at the TD Garden. Matt, any sort of immediate thoughts on the Boston Celtics?
I don't like them. I don't like them at all, Sean.
Wow.
I don't like them at all. Not one bit.
Damn. Okay. Tell us how you really feel.
They're a Boston team, Sean. I can't root for a Boston team. I just can't.
That's a really... Can we take a quick timeout, side project and rank rank the different Boston teams based on unlikability?
Yeah, I've thought about this before. The Patriots are definitely first, no doubt about it.
That's fair.
Definitely first because at least with the Red Sox, they had the whole and the curse was lifted, so they're not as insufferable. So I definitely think the Patriots are most hated of all Boston sports just because of their Bill Belichick success.
I agree. I'll back you up.
I mean, I don't know. Actually, hockey, I think would be pretty high. So second, I might actually put the Bruins second. I don't have anything against them really, but I know that within NHL circles, maybe it's just because I know a lot of people from Pittsburgh. They really don't like the Bruins. There's some kind of rivalry there, which is weird to me because, right, they have the same color scheme and they yellow and black, and they're also from Pittsburgh and Boston. I feel like is not really it's not like New York and Boston or Pittsburgh and Cleveland, but I don't know. There's apparently some kind of animosity. So I would go personally, I would say Patriots, Bruins, Red Sox, Celtics. Maybe not. Maybe we would change the position of Celtics to be a little higher.
I would put the Bruins pretty I don't think the Bruins are that insufferable. I think people hate them because they're good. They've never really gone out and done anything like the Patriots where you have a reason to hate them other than they beat your team. I think with the Celtics have had some history of just being shitty as people. And I think the Red Sox I think the whole Red Sox Yankees thing is really insufferable, and I think you're right that it was fun when they were an underdog, but it's not fun anymore because they really are like they've won like and have been to a zillion World Series in the last decade and a half. So I would say it's probably for me Patriots, Red Sox, Celtics, Bruins would be my opinion.
Speaking as a baseball fan, I hold a bit of a controversial opinion that the Red Sox Yankees rivalry is more historical and even more manufactured than it is real.
Yeah.
I don't really think it's to me an even more like actual rivalry in baseball. I mean, it's not like I would say Dodgers Giants is probably a bigger rivalry.
Oh, sure.
Maybe even one of the biggest rivalries in MLB right now that nobody or few people talk about, I think, is Astros Rangers. Those two teams in Texas, I think, are more of a brutal, because that way you have like a cross town. I think that's more vicious than two random cities that just happen to be kind of close together. Historically, yes, I think there was when baseball was in its infancy, significant, but nowadays teams have had a significant amount of success in recent years, and I would say that ESPN played up for the rivalry.
Yeah, I'm not impressed with that, and I agree with you, Matt. I think I definitely don't see you as a Boston Celtics fan. I think I would be kind of disappointed if you chose it. I'd also point out that I think Lucky the Leprechaun, who is their mascot, one of the shittier mascots in the NBA.
Yeah, I don't know. Why do you know the answer to that? Why are they called the Boston Celtics and not the Boston Celtics?
I am going to try and I'm going to try and read Wikipedia really quickly because I actually don't know the answer. And there's no answer on.
Hopefully, maybe somebody out there, listener.
Yeah, tweet at us.
Right in.
I will say there is a page on the Celtics website about Lucky the Leprechaun fun facts if you're interested. His favorite foods are Lucky Charms and pizza with green peppers.
What? I didn't expect that.
His favorite book is Green Eggs and Ham.
Okay.
His favorite number is 18 for the number of the next world championship the Celtics are going to win. They already have 17. And his favorite basketball players are any that wear green and white. So he sucks. That sucks.
Do they do some kind of like an interview with him?
Yeah, a real
Lucky the Leprechaun and
a real intense interview. Yeah.
Wow.
Put him on the spot. Well, Matt, I think we've sort of. We don't need to talk about the city. We talk about the Red Sox than we did the Celtics, but that's okay.
They're definitely out. They're eliminated.
Because we're going to go on to a team I think is much more in your wheelhouse, your Brooklyn Nets. Formerly known as the New Jersey Nets, have never won an NBA championship, but did go to back-to-back finals in the 01-02 season, 02-03 season, both time getting just absolutely demolished in the finals by a incredible Lakers team. They are now in Brooklyn at the Barclays Center, and they just played last night. Had an incredible game now with KD and Kyrie Irving, Coach Steve Nash, a team with an interesting one. The mascot of the New Jersey Nets was Sly the Silver Fox. Now they have a new superhero mascot called Brooklyn Knight, which if you have not seen it's not. Oh, they retired him. I didn't read that far in the article. They had him for like 2 years and they shut it down. Okay. Not that I blame him.
The Silver Fox. That sounded cool.
Yeah, Sly the Silver Fox was the New Jersey Nets. And before that they had a dragon called Duncan the Dragon. So
mascot, I have to say.
Yeah, you could do a lot better.
Definitely scoring me. Advantage. I'll speak on it briefly. That live in I know that's divisive. Like, talk to people from Jersey, and they're like, some Jersey, and then others are like, left New Jersey, basically, for the Knicks or like that. I think it's understand it. Of course, I support the team. The one team we still do have, the New Jersey Devils, and the team that we actually do have, I want to admit it, the New York Giants. I like the idea that the Nets used to play in Jersey. I didn't really, I didn't care for them obviously back when they did because I was a kid and I didn't know much about basketball. I still don't know much about basketball. So the Nets are I'm just saying they're very, very high on my list right now.
Yeah, it's interesting because the Nets are, should you pick them, a very trendy team right now. A very of the moment, like sort of a bandwagon is really not fair because they haven't actually won anything yet, but they are a team that I think people are taking a second look at, had sort of long been in the tubes. So you certainly would be in good company, Matt. I'm going to share with you here the logos of the New Jersey Nets, which had some of my favorite logos of all time that I'm a big fan of. Some of these 70s, 80s, 90s Nets logos are just awesome.
I've never seen the only one I had ever seen before was the most recent one.
It was the modern one. I love like whatever this font is. Like I just think it's so neat. And the one thing I don't like about the current Nets is the sort of black and white aesthetic. I think is kind of like, is it the team you want to wear the hat of or the shirt of or the jersey of? To me, it's a little
fades into the background a little bit.
Yeah, it's also very Spurs. Like the Spurs have the exact same color scheme, you know. But I think you'd be in fine company if you were to choose it. And like I said, a team on the rise, so could be a good choice for you, Matt.
Indeed.
Why don't we talk about
the only I was going to say the only basketball team where I have visited. I've been to the venue of. I've been to the Barclays Center. So. Been to the Barclays Center, never been to Madison Square Garden.
Well, you know, Matt, speaking of Madison Square Garden.
I've been out Madison Square Garden many times. Never been in, but.
Well, let's talk about the team that resides there, your New York Knickerbockers, commonly referred to as the Knicks. Also located in New York City, as you mentioned, at Madison Square Gardens, 2 NBA championships in the 70s. And not good at all in any way. Ever.
No sugarcoating.
I'm not even going to play a team that has just been just really disappointing. I guess you could say, but a team with certainly a rich history in the NBA. I don't know, Matt. When you think of the Knicks, what do you think about?
I think they're they've got to be the basketball equivalent of the Jets. Like just not only do they lose a lot, but they're also an incredibly corrupt and disorderly organization from the inside out.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a fair comparison. I'd also point them to Daniel Snyder and the Washington Redskins, where it's like a true trash human being of an owner who just will not admit they don't know what they're doing and will continually drive the team into the ground. And even when the team is good or show signs of promise, it's an illusion that will immediately shatter upon closer inspection.
Yeah, I was going to say, I lived with that about 13 years, and now we finally shed those corrupt and incompetent owners this year with the purchase of the team by Steve Cohen. So I don't know if I want to get into that again with the Knicks because I don't know how long it's going to be before they ever get out, before they ever see the light of day. But until now, it really seems like they are a bottom tier, like the crap that gets stuck to the bottom of the barrel type team, and it's sad.
Yeah, I mean, again, it's one of those things where just because a team has always been bad doesn't mean they always will be bad. I mean, I think that's one of the fun things about sports. The Red Sox and the Cubs eventually won World Series, right? So it doesn't mean a team can't get good. Right now, we're seeing the Bills are very good in the NFL. We're seeing the Browns are suddenly very good in the NFL. But on the other hand, they play in kind of a crappy stadium. They have James Dolan is just a trash human being. A just insane rotation of coaches and general managers. Again, if it were me, I would feel ashamed to wear like a Knicks hat, and I would expect people to spit on me, and I would rightfully deserve it.
Right. Oh, yeah. So that's that. And you know what? On top of that, even if they were successful and even if they were mildly competent, they still have a weird name. You got to admit, like the Knickerbockers, the Knicks. It's a weird name to have in 2020. Like, strange. It's unlike anything else and not in a good way. Like you're named after a fancy type of shoes, or is that what that is? Is that what a Knickerbocker is?
Well, I'm glad you asked. The Knickerbocker name comes from the pseudonym used by Washington Irving in his book A History of New York, a name that became applied to the descendants of the original Dutch settlers of what later became.
What a strange name. Just like it really reminds me of a name that would have been phased out in the 1920s or like 30s. Like Cleveland, before they were the Cleveland Indians, they used to be the Cleveland Naps, which is just like a strange, antiquated name that you wouldn't call a team the Naps today. It just like it's a weird like oldness. Like the before they became the Giants, New York Giants, and the subsequent San Francisco Giants, they were the New York Gothams, which I think is a really boss name, but it's an old timey name. So it was founded, it was phased out in the 1910s. So it's it's just like that. But for some reason, Knickerbocker decided to stick. Odd name,
odd team, Matt. But speaking of another team with a historical name, how about we travel on over to your Philadelphia 76ers? As we mentioned, one of the few teams to be named after a year, based in Philadelphia at the Wells Fargo Center. A 3-time championship team, a prominent history in the league, a number of Hall of Fame players. Wilt Chamberlain, Julius Erving, Moses Malone, Charles Barkley, Allen Iversons. They've only been to a finals recently in 2001, where they were led by Iverson and lost to the Lakers in 5 games. And a team that is sort of, we talked about this, the process as it sort of comes to an end, and they just got a new coach this year, a new president of operations. Their mascot is Franklin the dog.
I actually just saw him waving a big flag. He's in the mid. I guess they're kind of wiping the court down, waving his big flag. Franklin the dog. Yeah, as I mentioned on this show before, that I'm probably the most high on right now. Like I am most enjoying the Sixers, and if we weren't doing this pick a Matt fandom contest, I might just go ahead and remain a Sixers fan. I don't know how right that is. It doesn't feel unnatural. I mean, I'm not from Philly. I don't really live. I've never. I'm close to Philly, maybe about an hour and a half and change away in central Jersey. So it's not like an incredible affront, I guess, to be a Philadelphia 76ers fan. I already mentioned that I also have a weird kind of interest in the Eagles this year. They've been an exciting team to watch and to follow. I've kind of picked them as almost like a surrogate team. While the Giants are shitting the bed constantly. So, yeah, I mean, I could totally see myself being a Sixers fan. I do have some questions about the 76ers, though. Number one, and I think we talked about this off camera, but if you want to tell the folks at home, Sean, what's all this business with the process?
The process.
I see this on T-shirts and fan sites. Tell us about the process.
So, and I'm certainly not an expert, and we only have so much time to get into kind of the high level of it. But basically, coming off of 2013, the team was bad, like really bad. And so they brought on Coach Brett Brown, and we're one of the most public teams, I would argue, ever to say we're rebuilding, and the fans have to accept that. And they called it the process, was sort of a nickname that was given to it. And it started by trading away all of their current players, essentially, for draft picks, being absolutely terrible for several years. And over that time, using those draft picks to pick up a bunch of top talent, including several number one picks, as well as using those draft picks to then trade for good players from other teams. The theory being that at the end of it, they would have an impressive roster put together, mainly based around, in this case, Joel Embiid, which was the third overall pick. He was followed up by Ben Simmons as a top pick, as well as then Markelle Fultz, who didn't work out, and they traded him away to the Magic. The unfortunate thing, Matt, is it never really worked. They never won anything. And the process, they fired Brett Brown, Joey Colangelo, all the people who set up the process are now gone, and they're trying to figure out what to do next.
So the process was a failure. It's like a metaphor for trying your best and planning everything out, and then just in the end, just coming up short.
I think it just goes to show how difficult it is to GM a basketball team, quite frankly, because it's not just about draft picks. There's a lot more that it's so many pieces that even if you do everything right, it can fail. And sometimes there's luck. Ben Simmons struggled early. Markelle Fultz never worked out. Joel Embiid had some injuries. It's just one of those things where there's just so much out of your control. You can't have a process in the NBA.
Okay.
But it sucks extra hard for the Philadelphia fans because they were told for years that, look, our team's going to win 20 games each year for like 4 years straight, and you have to suck it up and admit it, but then we're going to win a bunch of championships. And they did suck it up, and they were cool with it, and that's why you've processed T-shirts, and then they never won anything. So that's a tough pill to swallow.
Yeah, and it sounds like everybody that was involved with the process got run on a rail. Is that correct?
Yeah, honestly, quite honestly. I mean, this past year in the bubble, they were eliminated in the first round of the playoffs in a 4-0 sweep. So embarrassing.
Wow.
That was basically the end of the process.
Okay. You said that the Sixers are a historic franchise team.
Yes.
Talk a little bit about that. When was the last time they won a championship?
Matt, I'm glad you asked. 1983 was their last one. They had a fantastic team. That Moses Malone, Julius Irving, Mo Cheeks, who we've talked about on the show before, who you didn't believe was a real person, but
you made him up. Yeah.
Nope, a real team. Yeah, that was a really incredible team right there, and several future Hall of Famers.
I hear a lot of hype that the Sixers and the Nets are both supposed to be very good teams this year. Is that true?
The Nets, for sure. I mean, they have Kevin Durant, arguably a top 10 player in the league, one of the best players in the league, as well as Kyrie Irving, who's pretty darn good on his own right. The issue with the 76ers is just they have talent. I don't think there's any debating that, but it's the same with the Clippers are the same way, where they have talent. There's no doubt about it. They just don't play well together, and they don't win games. If they can get their shit together, there's no reason why they couldn't.
Okay. Really quick, I think the last point, and then we can move on to the next team. Last point I wanted to make about the Sixers is their song. They have just an awesome.
I don't know their. No, tell me all about this, man.
Okay,
I don't know anything about this.
I'm gonna send it to you in the chat. But for the folks at home, every time the Sixers win at home, they play this little jingle that I think comes back from I think it's from like the 80s or 90s or something. and it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Sixers. No, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Sixers. 10, 9, 8, 76ers. And ever since I heard it, Sean, it has been stuck in my head.
That's like Sesame
Song.
Street level shit. That's awful.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, Sixers. I don't really know if there's anything else that happens in the song or any other words, but great song. It's an old school song. They play it every time they win. The song is called "Here Come the Sixers." That's the official
holy shit.
title.
That's awful.
The Sixers, and I've just had it stuck in my head. Here, I'm going to pop it into the chat real quick. You can enjoy it on your time.
I will.
Very good.
Matt, one quick thing I'll say before we move on to the next team. I think it's kind of unfair that Boston gets a lot of crap as a sports city, and I think Philadelphia needs to get more crap because the Eagles kind of like suck and are like an unpleasant team. And I think the 76ers are like, with the process and all this bullshit, are kind of crappy. And the Phillies are like, why bother? I just think Philadelphia is, if we're going to give Boston crap, I'm going to give Philadelphia crap.
Can you hear that?
Yeah.
Let's skip ahead. Oh, yes, that's right. Philadelphia 76ers.
When did that song come out? 1976?
1,
That's
2, 3, 4, 5, Sixers.
Stand up and cheer. Number 1, Philadelphia. Here they come.
Team of the year.
What year?
5 Sixers. 10, 9, 8, 76ers. Team of the year.
I'm sure that was a big hit in all the discos around Philadelphia at the time.
Yeah, it's an old one. All right, let's see what's next, because I think that really kind of wraps it up. All right, actually, one last thing. Of all the teams that I think deserve to have red, white, and blue as their color scheme, I think the Sixers are in my top 2. I often get really upset how a lot of sports franchises co-opt white and blue as their color scheme. I think it's lazy. I think it is really annoying. Like so many teams, so many franchises have red, white, and blue as their colors. I think the Sixers, if I had to narrow it down to like 2 or 3 teams that get to keep those colors, I would say the Sixers, I would say the Patriots, and I would say the Montreal Expos, except they're not a team anymore. So maybe
so they kind of have to keep it.
We need a baseball team in there.
Yeah, Matt, I don't think you're going to be happy when we talk about the Detroit Pistons and Washington Wizards later, if that's your opinion. But before we get to those, Matt, we need to go north of the border to your Toronto Raptors.
Now, I'm interested in the Raptors. Tell me a bit about them.
I'd love to tell you, Matt. Toronto Raptors, obviously based in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, since 1995, an expansion team at that point. They expanded at the same time as the Vancouver Timberwolves, who later became the Grizzlies. Sorry, the Vancouver Grizzlies, who became the Memphis Grizzlies. A team that was very bad when they first started, brought on Vince Carter, and made the NBA playoffs in 3 consecutive years. But they failed to make progress. They traded him away, and they weren't good again until 2019. They brought on Kawhi Leonard and a number of other great stars who won them a championship, their first and only championship in 2019. Kawhi Leonard left for the Clippers, but they continue to be good. Kyle Lowry, Aaron Baines, Fred VanVleet, Pascal Siakam, quite a number of stars there, but a relatively recent franchise, if you will. Their mascot is a Velociraptor, which I don't think is surprising to anyone. And obviously, their most famous fan is rapper Drake.
I have heard that. Yeah, that it's this is Drake's team. And didn't they consider him was he like a bad luck charm or something? Like when they were in the finals, I remember there was a big joke, like every game he showed up to, they lost. The team like formally asked him to stop showing up to games or something. Is that something that happened?
Yeah. Yes, you're exactly right. One other thing I will say is that they have, I think, one of what I would argue is the most classic late 90s, early 2000s logos with the Raptor who plays basketball, which I just absolutely, this on a vintage shirt, absolutely fantastic.
One thing I've noticed about NBA teams is that it's kind of difficult. I'm finding it kind of difficult, at least, to choose their primary colors. Like decide, they seem very like indecisive as to what the primary colors of their team are. So Raptors, it looks like it's purple, red, and blue, but then they also have green jerseys. And then I also noticed there's like some white in the logo, so it's like, it's something I've noticed.
These days, you'll notice on the more modern logos, it's very red, white, and black. They've shied away from the purple as of recent that you see in some of the older logos.
I will say that I think the name Raptors is a really badass name for a sports team.
Oh, for sure.
Cool. Very cool name, the Raptors. And there's really not a lot of badass names in NBA. There's a lot of cool names, but I wouldn't say there's a lot of like intimidating names. And Raptors is definitely a very intimidating name. Is there like a mascot? They have a mascot Raptor?
They do. They just call him Raptor, but it is a Velociraptor mascot. Matt, I got a quick fun fact for you. Would you like to know the other names considered when the team expanded?
Yeah.
The over 2,000 entries were narrowed down to 11 prospects. The Beavers, the Bobcats, of course, went on the Charlotte Bobcats happened later. The Dragons, the Grizzlies, who instead they used in Vancouver, the Hogs, the Raptors, of course, the Scorpions, T-Rex, Tarantulas, Terriers, and what became the runner-up in a reference I do not understand would have been the Toronto Towers.
I don't really get that. Are there large buildings in Toronto? Never been there. I'm sure there are skyscrapers, but
the CN Tower is sort of their signature icon building. But could you imagine a team after September 11th called the Towers? Like,
no,
I just
they
feel
would
like
probably have changed. I would assume
that was a good
changed
idea
their
to not do that.
Changed it, but I'm glad they settled on the Raptors. That's a cool name for a team. The alliterative Toronto Terriers. That would have been awful.
Well,
Toronto
there was a
Terrapins, maybe, but not Terriers.
well, there was a basketball team called the Toronto Huskies back in the 40s and 50s that folded. There was a consideration to maybe use that name as well.
Yeah. I could have seen the Scorpions, Toronto Scorpions. That's kind of not for a basketball team. I feel like that would be like an XFL team.
Well, I was going to say the Tarantulas also sounds like a fake team, like the Toronto Tarantulas. Like, what a mouthful!
It sounds a lot like a generic, like a team you make on like Madden Team Builder. The Toronto Tarantulas. Yeah.
Yep, we're just randomly mixing animals and city names.
Yeah, exactly. I'm glad they settled on the Toronto Raptors, and I think I think they're a cool team. Are they the most northern-based team in the league right now? Because Seattle doesn't have a team.
If you're going by like an absolute, like I'm looking at a map, if you're going by like a map, they're pretty equal with the Timberwolves in Minnesota, and the Trailblazers in Portland, who are right at the top of Oregon. So it's pretty close. They arguably are.
That's true. There's also,
and even the Celtics are pretty far north if you look at it again, because of where Toronto is pretty low in Canada.
It is. That's why it always kind of, when I first found out that, like whenever the Mariners and the Blue Jays would play each other, I feel like inevitably the announcers would bring up the fact that Seattle is actually more northern than Toronto, and
Yep.
a lot of people don't know that. But it was just
Absolutely.
kind of just intriguing. So I'm guessing they might be. Well, there's also, you said there's a team in Vancouver, right? The Grizzlies.
There was. They moved to Memphis, but they
Oh,
started.
they don't
in
play
Vancouver.
anymore. Okay,
So
they're not-
Toronto is the only Canadian basketball team still in operation.
Gotcha. Are the people in Vancouver upset about losing their NBA team?
I'm sure they were back when it happened, but that was many years ago.
Yeah. Usually in sports debates, I'm very much inclined to give like if anybody asked me the next city I would expand a new baseball team to, usually Vancouver is like top of my list. If they ask me like where we should put a new, do they have an NHL team? Vancouver Canucks, right? They do have an
Yes.
NHL team.
Yep.
So basketball team, I feel for them. I kind of have an affinity, I guess, a soft spot for Vancouver.
Yeah, basketball's tough because they haven't had a lot of teams that have moved. It's not one of those leagues where teams are constantly jumping cities. I mean, they certainly have had some, but certainly not in the last, back in the 40s and 50s, sure, but not since then. Very few. I would say Vancouver, of course, the Seattle Supersonics moving to Oakland was probably the biggest, most recent move. And of course, the whole Pelicans, Hornets, Bobcats fiasco.
Yeah, that's the big one. That I remember when that was going on. It's kind of the big one I think everybody thinks of in recent memory, in terms of movement. Any last thoughts? What's that?
No, my only last thought is I think the Raptors could be a great option for you, and I was going to pivot on over to another team. Are you ready?
Yeah, no, I'm all set.
Now, Matt,
I'm keeping on my list for sure. They're on the short list.
You asked what was the northernmost NBA team. What's the southernmost NBA team? Our next up.
I guess that would be your Miami Heat.
Oh, look at this guy. He knows how to read a map. You're
Whoa.
absolutely right. The Miami Heat, based in Miami, Florida, since 1988. Three-time NBA championship, once in 06, behind NBA MVP Shaq, as well as Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway, and then again back-to-back in 12 and 13 with the big three of Dwayne Wade, LeBron James, and Chris Bosh. Now returned to the NBA Finals this past year, Matt. Very good, an up-and-coming team with Jimmy Butler leading the team, but other great players like Bam Adebayo, Avery Bradley, Gorgon Dragic, Udonis Haslem, Tyler Hero, rookie, who played very well. Famously coached for a very long time by Pat Riley, who, as well as Stan Van Gundy, playing at the Amway Center in Miami.
Okay, and this is also the very famous with the decision, right? With
That's
with LeBron James, and
he took his talents to South Beach.
I'm going to take my talents to South Beach. He had that whole special where he just like was interviewed and like talked about himself for 90 minutes, and then revealed at the end that he was going to go to the Miami Heat.
That's right. It was a big competition back at that time when he was leaving Cleveland for the first time.
I like the historiosity of this franchise, Sean. I feel like the Miami Heat are a not like historical franchise, not like the Celtics or the Knicks or something like that, but more like they are like our lifetime historical team. Besides like the Bulls, which I would argue probably the most historically significant for our lifetimes, and the Lakers, which would probably be close. That the Heat probably would rank third on that list. Significant teams, maybe the Celtics. I think there's an argument Boston Celtics, but I think I would probably give it to the Heat, just because this decision with your LeBron James. So That being said, I like the historiosity of it. I don't have any kind of a connection to the city of Miami. I've never been there. I have no really strong desire to visit Miami. Not really big on Florida as a state. I'm not too keen on it. Never really have been. So I don't know about this. I think this is one that's going to take some convincing, I have to say.
Well, I think on the plus side for the Heat is, they haven't been around that long, right? Founded in '88, and they've had very clear
Timeouts? Okay.
time. What's the word I'm looking for? The time segments, the eras. They've had very clear eras within that, where Dwayne Wade, drafted in 2003, led them to their first championship alongside Shaq after leaving the Lakers and a few other great players. Then, okay for a couple years. Then the Big Three. Great, won a couple championships. Big Three broke up. Mediocre for a couple years. 2020, strong up-and-coming team. Jay Crowder, Andre Iguodala, Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero, all these guys in the finals last year. Going to be a strong team this year. Young, fun, exciting team. No big national name brand player. Their coach Eric Spoelstra is a very cool guy. He actually started. I love his story if you don't know it, but he as like a high school kid wrote to the Miami Heat like a letter and said, "I love basketball and I'll take any job you will give me at the Miami Heat because I love basketball." And so they put him like in the tape room as like the lowest paid intern. And he's worked there ever since, all the way up from the lowliest guy in the tape room to being the head coach of the team. It's a cool story. You never see that anywhere. And so it's a team that really hasn't had a ton of controversy, a team that treats its players very well. I would say it's a team you could feel good rooting for. I think on the downside is they don't have a really cool history long-term like some other teams do. You won't find a lot of Miami Heat fans across the country like you will with some teams. They're just not a national team in a lot of ways, despite their success. But I think
that's the thing.
It's also as a good
probably
person
not.
Is Matt Mariani a Miami?
As of right now, I don't think so. I really did enjoy though that story about the head coach. I think that's
a tough question.
That is really heartwarming. That's really something that you truly never see nowadays, and I think that's really cool. Something that speaks to the organization. Were they a team previously, or were they like a franchise team? Do they come from another city, or?
Yeah, I mean it's a
okay.
They were an expansion team in '88, so they've only ever been there. Right now, they are owned by Mickey Arison, who is the head of Carnival Cruises.
Yeah, that about who are some famous current stars that play for the Heat? Yep. Jimmy
Butler. If you wore a Jimmy Butler jersey, you're going to be the most popular guy on the street. And like I said, there's really no like big like marquee players on this team. That's kind of what's fun about it. Is it's Bam Adebayo is a great example, who is a guy who, I mean, he was selected 14th overall, so he's not a no name, but basically he was just kind of like fine in the league for his first couple of years, and then last year he had like a really huge breakout playoffs, and he got a huge contract out of it.
Okay.
So
what's their,
that's what's kind of neat about it. It's a team you can grow up with.
When's the last time they won a championship? And how many championships have they won?
Three championships. The one in 2006, like I mentioned, with Shaq and Dwayne Wade,
so
and then the 12 and 13 back-to-back with the Big Three.
Where do they rank in terms of their championships? Like fourth or fifth?
They also have
organizations.
Let me see if I can find their if they have their. Oh, That's a really good question. Is there a championships? There we go. I can actually see it. In terms of
5 for 8.
wins,
Okay.
they are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8th. Tied for 8th. Tied for 8th. Let's see. The Lakers and Celtics are tied at 17. The next winningest team is the Warriors with 6. Then the Bulls with 6, the Spurs with 5, the 76ers with 3, the Pistons with 3, and then the Heat with 3.
Yeah, we got to keep going. What's next?
Yeah, there you go. But Matt, we're gonna leave the Sunshine State and head over to another place in the Sunshine State because we're gonna talk about the Orlando Magic. Orlando. I love their theme song. Orlando, an expansion team in that same 88 timeframe that added the Heat, brought on the Orlando Magic. By the way, I misspoke. I should have been better. The Heat don't play at the Amway Center. They play at American Airlines Arena. The Orlando Magic play at the Amway Center. My apologies. They have never won a championship. They did go to the finals twice, once in 1995, where they lost to the Houston Rockets in a sweep, and again in 2009, where they got crushed by the the Kobe Bryant Los Angeles Lakers. An interesting team, Matt. There's a great 30 for 30 doc on the early days of the Orlando Magic I recommend because they somehow magically managed to get the first round pick in 2 back-to-back drafts. Very hard to do. And they used it to take Penny Hardaway and then Shaquille O'Neal, the two of them, leading them to the championship run that they eventually lost. Then Dwight Howard came in 2004, took them to an NBA Finals where they also lost.
30
and ever since, they've been kind of
this magic moment.
Pure uncut trash.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, great documentary. I do recommend it. What was I going to say? First of all, I always loved that their original arena name was the Orlando Arena, also known as the O Arena, which I always thought was very clever.
That's awesome.
Yeah, there you go. Stuff the Magic Dragon is their mascot. An unequivocal sort of Astros Philly fanatic knockoff.
If
like you will. Even the like
streamer,
what do you call the party things you blow into when they unfurl?
Yeah.
The blower things that they go.
Yeah. Wow, look at this guy.
And I think is it the Philly fanatic has one in his nose or something? Their mascot does too.
No, I'm into this mascot. He reminds me a little bit. It's a little bit like Gritty, the mascot of the Philadelphia Flyers, because he's like just looks crazy eyes going, and you can't tell like who did they make this mascot for, the kids or the adults. He looks hilarious. He actually does look a lot like a Philly fanatic. Yeah, no, he's looking good. I am definitely pro stuff.
I was gonna say
Stuff the Magic Dragon. Okay.
Yeah, Stuff the Magic Dragon. I'm pro some of the early Orlando Magic logos and word marks with the stars. Very, very retros, very 90s. Again, with this one where it's that like ultra bold font they used it for that period of time, where everything had to be in your
Sean,
face.
I think you might have me convinced a little bit
jerseys,
here,
which they don't do anymore.
I'm kind of getting I'm interested.
Kind of
I'm intrigued by the Orlando Magic a little bit. I am. Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's definitely an underdog team. I'll certainly give you that. I think, again, I always ask the question, if you walked into a bar and you were wearing an Orlando Magic shirt, what would people think? And they'd be like,
they would probably take
confused, I think is what they would kind of, that would be the sentiment. Because it's a team that quite honestly, I mean, they were
No
good in the
championships to their
Penny
name.
Hardaway Shaq era, but they never won anything.
Okay.
So it's not, this team's never won anything. No, like I said, they appeared in 95 where they were absolutely
Magic.
thrashed
Okay.
by the.
I like the idea of a team that plays in Orlando. As far as I know, they don't have any other sports franchises to their name.
That's absolutely correct.
And I think they don't they play like near Disney World or maybe even in Disney. Their facility is pretty close to Disney, right?
Well, I mean, it's in the city of Orlando, so it's all pretty close.
Yeah.
I mean, Walt Disney World is a major sponsor of the team, and that's obviously what the team's name sort of references.
When they played in the bubble this year, wasn't that like? Did they utilize the Orlando Magic's practice space or something like that? I remember hearing about them.
No, so they played at 100% on the Walt Disney campus. No doubt about that. And also the Orlando Magic weren't invited to the bubble because they were bad.
Oh, they had been eliminated by then. Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha. That makes sense.
Yeah. I mean, maybe my favorite name in the league. Definitely up there.
The Magic. This is how the Magic happens. Yeah, you've got me very keen on the Magic. I can easily see them moving forward significantly. So
be a cool choice.
You see.
But Matt, speaking of Magic, why don't we head on north to your Washington Wizards? A team with a huge history dating back to 61, was in Chicago, then Baltimore, finally in Washington, previously known as the Bullets, and were renamed in 1997. They have appeared in 4 NBA Finals, won one in 78, but haven't done anything significant since the late 70s. But certainly a team with a rich history that I know almost nothing about. Going through a kind of a rebuild of their own right now, trading away John Wall and bringing in Russell Westbrook, which was a pretty big move for them. Yeah, there you go. Their mascot is currently G Wiz, the letter G dash WIZ. And I'm trying to see if I can get some data. G Wiz, the official mascot, since 1997. Again, sort of a gremlin would be maybe how I would describe him. His favorite movies are The Wizard of Oz and Kazam. And he will come to your birthday party if you write him a check.
Looks like Gonzo from the Muppets.
Yeah, and he wears his wizard hat with stars on it.
Yeah. So the Wizards, I think, kind of a cool name for a sports franchise. Not the worst name I've heard. I know that they had to change the name because they used to be the Washington Bullets, and I think there was like a bad connotation because that at that time Washington, the nation in crime, urban crime. So of course they did not like the negative connotation, so they changed the name from the Bullets to the Wizards. Which, I mean, to their credit, that's I think it's a pretty easy, simple name change. I mean, I wish that the crosstown football team took the same cue and just easily changed, like, made a transition like that. But now they just made the bizarre choice of calling themselves the football team. So, yeah, I've got nothing really against the Washington Wizards. It's just they seem a little generic to me. Maybe it's because they play in the same city as the Washington Generals, who are like the team that is always destined to lose to the Harlem Globetrotters, like perpetually. Like what the aliens wanted to do to Michael Jordan in Space Jam, where they wanted him to play basketball and always lose. That kind of reminds me of the Washington Generals / Washington Wizards. I know that those two teams have no other affiliation other than the fact they both play basketball and are located in the city of Washington, D.C. But it's just the name, I guess. That's an extremely would that be Art Deco, that logo that you have up there?
It's like a drunken fever dream. I don't know. This is the original 97 Wizards logo when they switched over. It is bizarre, and I love it because I think the current logo is like generic to the max. I mean, it's whack.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's an extremely generic logo. I like the old one better, actually.
The old
bizarre throwback.
I never liked the old Bullets logo as well, where it's like just hands reaching up for a basketball. They've never, I don't know. They've never been good as a team. The only thing I ever remember them for is that that was where Michael Jordan tried to make his comeback in 2001 after retiring from the Bulls. He played a couple seasons with the Wizards where he was not very good. I love the story that he became president of basketball operations and a minority owner of the Wizards. And then a year later was like, I don't really like the front office thing. I'm just going to play for the team. And so he just like started playing for the team just because he could. And then he didn't really play all that much and wasn't particularly good.
It's like,
and
when
also
you start
like
the
team
game on 2K6 or 2K20, whatever. You want a video game. You play a video game of a sport. And you start like a franchise mode, and then you decide you're going to actually just play all the games instead. And to hell with all the managing. I think playing the game is more fun.
Yep.
But yeah, I actually do. I do remember when Jordan was a member of the Washington Wizards, and I do remember that he was not very good, and the sports channels just kind of ate him up a little bit. Yeah, my choice is probably not going to be the Wizards, I have to say. I probably will just, I don't know. When I lived in Northern Virginia, I tried to become a Washington Capitals fan because it was before I really got into hockey fandom that much. And it's just something about the energy of the Washington fans. I'm going to insult a lot of people.
Yeah, we're not making any friends.
No, but that's okay. A-Rod said something a long time ago on, well, not a long time, it was like a year and a half ago, on ESPN, and he said DC is just not a sports town. And I kind of agree with him. I don't think DC is a sports town. I've met some really great people in the DC area, some of the best friends, best people I've ever made. And I can definitely, with confidence, say they are some of the most knowledgeable fans and maybe even the most passionate. But as a whole, I mean, this if you looked at, I'm just going to keep referencing baseball because that's all I know. But if you look at the Washington Nationals in 2019, when they clinched I think was either game one of a major series. It was a playoff. It was like their first playoff win in the city of Washington, I think, ever as a major franchise. Their first win of a series win. You would expect that stadium to be full out, but in reality, it was like, it wasn't like it wasn't like a spring training game or like empty, but by any means, it wasn't sold out. Like in a real sports city, that venue is sold out. It is standing room only, and even the standing room there's no room to stand. But that moment, I think, was when I realized like DC is not a sports town. It just isn't.
I mean, it's not a good town in general. I mean, either you're wealthy and in politics and you leave on the weekends, or you're poor and live in slums and can't afford to go to sports games. So kind of a crappy city, no matter how you slice it, including their sports teams. But Matt, how about we move from one team partly owned by Michael Jordan to one team owned entirely by Michael Jordan, your Charlotte Hornets, a team that can barely stay in their one place. Another 1988 expansion team. famously moved to New Orleans for the 01 season, becoming the New Orleans Hornets. In 04, the NBA established the Charlotte's Bobcats as an expansion team. And then 10 years later, New Orleans announced it would become the Pelicans and returns the name back to Charlotte in time for the 14-15 season. Matt, this may be one of the losingest teams, probably the losingest team in the league. Never won a championship, never won a conference title, never won a division title, which is somehow kind of incredible because there's only 4 other teams in the divisions playing at the Spectrum Center at the moment. They have a couple of young guys at the moment. They just signed Gordon Hayward off the Celtics for a huge contract. LaMelo Ball just came over as well. Yeah, they're not. I think calling them a basketball team might be a stretch. I think their mascot is Hugo the Hornet, who actually isn't like the worst. So that's good.
Not really selling me on the Charlotte Hornets.
I mean, I really would like I said, majority owned by Michael Jordan. I again, if you want to get in, like, if you were paying, let's say you were paying cash for the rights to support these teams, like, this is a bargain basement deal. Like, they'll give you this one for free. But if you want to root for a team that will ever be good, I struggle to recommend you do that.
Yeah, I think just for the interest of time and the sake of the folks at home, I'm probably going to rule out the Charlotte Hornets. I don't like the whole story of them leaving and then coming back. It's a little weird to me. Like, just it's weird. I don't know. I don't like that. I don't like that they left and then the team gave the naming rights back to the city, and then but it's not the real Charlotte Hornets. It's like the new Charlotte Hornets. I don't know. I really have no attachment or affinity to the city of Charlotte at all. Never been there. Been to the airport twice, I think, but still just never got to explore the city around it.
Yeah, it's a big hub. It's a great city. I've been there a couple times, actually. It's a very nice city. I don't have anything against the Hornets. I will say the Bobcats may be the worst name and logoed team in the history of the National Basketball Association because it is upsettingly generic. If I took the word Charlotte out of it, you would think it was a fake team. And so, no, everything about it is sad and bad and disappointing. So we're just going to move on to hopefully a team people can get more excited about. Your Atlanta Hawks. The Atlanta Hawks, based in Atlanta, obviously, at State Farm Arena. A very early team, started as the Buffalo Bisons in 46 before they moved to Milwaukee, St. Louis, and ultimately Atlanta in 68. They have currently the second longest drought of not winning an NBA championship at 60 seasons. And the lone NBA championship, as well as all 4 NBA Finals appearances, occurred when the team was in St. Louis. Basically, they haven't done anything since the 50s, unfortunately. In fact, they went 48 years without advancing past the second rounds of the playoffs in any format until 2015. And are only one of 4 NBA teams that have qualified to play in the playoffs in 10 consecutive seasons. They're not good. They haven't been good. They're probably not going to be good. I can't.
So I did not know that this team existed. This is a brand new team to me. The Atlanta Hawks. Definitely brand new team. Which is cool. I don't really get that much. I don't get surprised that much. I mean, I assumed Atlanta probably had a team because they're a really big metro area. I assume a lot of people would watch a basketball team based in Atlanta. I mean, how could they not? I mean, even crimini's sake, Portland's got a basketball team, so I don't see how Atlanta would be denied that same luxury. But this is a bad logo, Sean. I'm looking at this logo. This is not a great logo. Extremely boring.
Yes,
red and white are the most generic colors in all of sports.
It's ultra modern, and again, their logo now says Atlanta Hawks Basketball Club. Very soccer of them. which is disappointing because some of their old classic logos, like the one they used through the '90s with the hawk and its talons wrapping the basketball, as well as some of the jersey. I loved some of this is their sort of late '80s jersey that you'll see in old highlights that I'm such a big fan of. They have a history, and I'll give them credit where credit's due. As far as I understand it, the people of Atlanta are Hawks fans. I mean, the city does support their team, despite the fact that they're trash. And so, more props to them. That's pretty good. At the same time, they also, I will let you know, Matt, they play at the Phillips Arena, which is probably, or no, I'm sorry, I said State Farm. It used to be Phillips Arena. I did say that, but State Farm Arena is the worst arena in the league. Absolute crap. It opened in 1999, and it was kind of a discount stadium at that point. And so, yeah,
Is
famous
it
for
known
like
as that, or is that just your strong opinion?
no, it's famous for like the most recent story was they had the voting at State Farm Arena for the recent election. And some pipes burst and they had to delay the voting.
Oh, was that at State Farm Arena? I
was
remember
at
hearing about that.
That was at State Farm Arena. The Atlanta Dream, which is their WNBA team, actually left and is now playing at a different smaller arena elsewhere. It's due to be hopefully replaced soon, but it is genuinely a bad stadium.
Yeah. Yeah, this is probably not going to be my team, I have to say. They
but Atlanta.
Yeah.
Atlanta's a city with a lot of street cred, though. I will say, a big sports town, very supportive of their teams. They love their Falcons. They love the Braves.
All right, yeah. So I would say this: if I move to Atlanta or move to the Atlanta metro area, I would probably likely to become an Atlanta Hawks fan, certainly faster or more readily than I would become an Atlanta Braves fan or an Atlanta Falcons fan. I would probably just call myself a Hawks fan just from living there. Unlike when I lived in Northern Virginia and really just tried to get on board with the Wizards and just couldn't. I feel like I would have an easier time flowing into Hawks fandom than with Wizards fandom. That being said, though, I don't live in Atlanta or anywhere close to it, so I don't think this is the team for me.
Okay. Well, let's pick a team that let's move to another team that is also nowhere near your question. Do you fear the deer?
Is that a real question? Of course. Deers are – I fear deer every time I'm from New Jersey. Every time I go into my car, I fear a deer is going to jump out and I'm going to run into it.
Then that means you've got some fear for your Milwaukee Bucks. That is their sort of actual slogan, is fear the deer. Go figure. A team that's been in Milwaukee since its inception in 1968, playing at the Fiserv Forum out there, has only won one championship in 71 and hasn't really done a lot since. But recently it's gotten good. Giannis Antetokounmpo, NBA's most valuable player, who has brought the team to the playoffs a number of times. And recently,
the Greek freak, is that what they call it?
He is the Greek. That is correct. The Greek freak.
Yes.
And they've recently Drew Holiday, Brooke Lopez, Chris Middleton, Bobby Portis, trying to build a team around them. Haven't been successful. Like I said, they've been in the playoffs and have lost in the conference finals, conference semifinals. Haven't done particularly well. Bango is their mascot. It is a deer, a stag, if you will.
Milwaukee Bucks. Let's see. They
now
are
famously
playing right now against the Celtics, and they are losing by a lot. But
that's early. Now I will say that famously at the 2009 All-Star Weekend in Phoenix, Arizona, Bango the mascot suffered an injury While standing on one basket's rim, Bango's right leg slipped through the hoop and he fell on the rim. Then he slipped further and fell through the basket entirely, tearing his ACL.
Oh, no. Well, that's something that we have in common. I've torn 2 ACLs in my lifetime.
Yep.
Also doing stupid stuff. So I can totally relate.
You would make a great NBA mascot, Matt.
I'm looking at something that's interesting is that team colors, Goodland Green, Cream City Cream, Great Lakes Blue, and then black and white.
And then black and white.
Those are the official team colors of the Milwaukee Bucks. When you said where they play, I thought you said the Pfizer Arena, like the drug company, but it's the Pfizer Forum.
That's right. Yes.
What
And
is
it's only been the
Pfizer?
Pfizer Forum for a little while because it was, what was it? I have to look and see what it was previously.
The Pfizer Forum, not the Pfizer Forum.
No.
Like the company that's coming out with the vaccine. It is Pfizer.
Which, by the way, is basically a brand new arena. It opened in 2018.
Yeah. It looks pretty good from the outside.
I mean, they spent $500,000 building it.
It was scheduled, Sean, to host the 2020 Democratic National Convention until that didn't happen anymore.
It sure was.
Or happened virtually.
One other famous note about the Bucks is they actually signed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar early in his career, had some success, actually helping him lead him to that championship that they did win. But then they traded him away to the Lakers, where he had a much larger and more successful career.
Fiserv is a financial company. Fiserv Inc., a global provider of financial services technology.
Sure sounds like it.
Yeah.
Antetokounmpo.
Something I'm concerned with the Bucks, right? Will I be called a front runner for rooting for this team? Because didn't they make it to the finals last year?
No, they made it to the conference finals in
Okay.
what would have been playoffs 2019.
Oh, okay. So not last year, not the most recent season.
No, I mean, they had a 60 win season that year. I mean, look, they're a good team, and people have them as potential favorites. Antetokounmpo, people have as a front runner to repeat as MVP. They're certainly a good team, but they're a small market team, and they haven't really proven they can successfully. It is very that sort of 76ers problem where they should be good and they should be winning a lot, and they're not.
Players just don't mesh. They don't mesh well, or whatever reason.
Well, yeah, they just fall short. Unfortunately, I think their logo is kind of generic. Their new one, I think it's kind of flat. But I think you could do worse than the Milwaukee Bucks.
Okay. I'll keep them in mind. I think they're a really intriguing team, especially because I've heard a lot about them lately. They're very in right now.
Absolutely.
So also I like you have the Greek Freak on their team. It's a kind of a cute, endearing nickname. I'll keep them in mind.
Well, Matt, if you thought the Milwaukee Bucks were fun, how about we head on over to your Indiana Pacers, based in Indianapolis. A longtime member of the league, founded in 1967 as part of the ABA and then brought over as part of the merger, playing at Bankers Life Fieldhouse. The team is named after the state of Indiana's history with the Indianapolis 500 pace cars and with the harness racing industry, in case you're wondering where that name came from. They have not won any NBA championships, unfortunately, and only appeared in one in 2000, which is kind of a shame because a spectacularly good team in the 90s and early 2000s behind Reggie Miller, Isaiah Thomas, a bunch of future Hall of Famers there. And recently, they've kind of been a team trying to figure themselves out. They had some loose success. They're kind of in the playoffs every year, but never really go anywhere. They've traded some folks away, sort of led now by Victor Oladipo, Miles Turner, God, God, they did trade. I'm looking at the TJ McConnell. I'm looking at their roster, and I'm like, they traded a lot of good people away. But obviously, several Hall of Famers who played on the team over the years, and Boomer, which is a so Matt, I don't think you've read this, so let's see if you can guess. Can you guess what animal the Pacers mascot is?
Is he?
I'll give you. It's an animal.
Is it? My first thought was like a cheetah because they run really fast.
Okay.
To keep pace with another animal. Another thought I had was that the Pacers could be like a buffalo because in Indiana is in the middle of nowhere as a state. I give up. What animal is it?
Boomer is a panther.
I was close with cheetah. Okay.
Yeah, not far off.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're from there, but
no, they're definitely not native to. I don't think there's any cheetahs in North America, but I do think it's a fitting name for a team that is talking about like keeping pace. Other teams, like a cheetah can outpace most land mammals. I would think most land animals. So
sure.
The only thing I know about the Pacers, Sean, is I saw a replay one time of just an absolute disaster that happened on a court at the Pacers home arena. And it was like one of the players, not on the Pacers, but I think it was a player on the opposing team who I can't remember, might have been Detroit Pistons. They like jumped up into the stands and started like punching another member of the crowd, like over and over again. And then they started like throwing drinks at him. And like, then they had to evacuate both teams from the court because it was becoming like a riot. That's all I know about the Pacers pretty much. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Well, you're talking about the Malice in the Palace, which actually was an away game for the Pacers.
They have a game for that. Okay.
Oh, it's great. Well, it happened. It was against the Detroit Pistons. Happened in Detroit. They used to play at the Palace. Used to be their arena in Detroit. That's why it was the Malice at the Palace.
So I have the roles reversed. So it was a Pacers player that jumped into the crowd.
That's right. Ron Artest at the time was the one who famously jumped in. I could talk about that for a long time. A fascinating piece of basketball history, but basically, that's a huge rivalry at the time was the Pacers Pistons. And basically they started scuffling on the floor, which would have ended there. Certainly was heated until idiot fans started throwing things on the court, hit Ron Artest in the face with a cup, and Ron Artest wasn't having that, went up in the stands with a couple other players, and hence the Malice in the Palace. I still think one of the longest, if not the longest suspension ever handed out by the league was to Ron Artest over that.
And how many games?
I don't know off the top of my head, but it was high double digits. It was like 60. It was almost like a whole season, basically.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty bad. You don't really see stuff like that happen in other sports. I think it's just because of the closeness of basketball fans. They're basically right on the court.
I've never understood that. I've never understood because you see highlights all the time of players who run into fans or who knock fans' drinks over, or even crazier, the extremely rare time where a fan just walks onto the court, which has happened, like in the middle of a game. There's some great highlights.
I'm surprised that doesn't happen more often. I'm surprised that doesn't happen at like every Sixers game, just like a drunk fan just wanders onto the court.
I mean, there's literally nothing. There was a great clip a few years ago. I think it was pregame. But the guy was sitting there, and I'm sure you can buy them. He bought like the warm-up clothes that the teams use, and he just sort of like, when no one was paying attention, he sort of just walked out during the pregame, and he like shot a couple practice shots, and then eventually they're like, "Wait, you don't play for us?"
I heard about that. Yeah,
they're like, "That's awesome."
You have to be like really in shape to do that. You can't
and he was not. He was not. Like he looked like a schlub, which was awesome. And he took a couple shots, and then I'm sure he was banned from the stadium forever.
Yeah. Oh, but he's probably got some great stories to tell his kids.
But, Indiana, rich basketball history, of course, and also may be known, Matt, famously in 1988 with the second overall pick, took Marist College alum, the dunking Dutchman himself, Rick Smits.
Ooh, yeah. Very popular.
A longtime Indiana Pacer.
Okay. So we got a little bit of a connection then to the Pacers.
Yeah, we sure do.
All right. Let's go over their logo and uniforms.
Yes, obviously yellow and sort of a navy blue are their primary color. For a long time, it was the P with the basketball in it, which they still use. But again, they've gone to that more sort of circle emblem logo. They had their pinstripe phase for a long time, and now it's pretty simple. Pretty simple.
It is. It's one of the more basic logos in all of basketball, from what I can see. And I'm not crazy about it. Has it always looked that way, or has it been like pretty consistent over the years? That like just generic giant letter P.
No, it's basically always been that. I mean, there has not been a rich history of varied logos or colors even.
It's probably changed the least. It's got to be one of the least changed logos
for a team that's been around for 60 years. Yeah, absolutely. I would agree.
Yeah.
And one other weird thing I do like about them is the fact that they don't play at an arena; they play at a field house. And I don't know what the difference is. It's Bankers Life Field House.
Ooh, I've never heard that. Yeah, of a sports team.
It's odd. The arena was built to invoke an Indiana high school and college field house. What is a college field house? A field house is a common name for an indoor sports arenas and stadiums.
Ooh, this sounds like a Midwest thing.
Yeah, it definitely is.
Field house. Yeah, very much sounds like a Midwest thing.
Matt, you mentioned the Malice in the Palace. Let's go over to their opponent in the Malice in the Palace, your Detroit Pistons. Beginning in Fort Wayne in 1941, they moved to Detroit in 1957, where they've been ever since. Quite an interesting team. The 3 NBA championships in 89 and 90 back-to-back, and again in 2004. Anything before 1980 really isn't an interesting conversation, but 1980 kicked off what's known as the Bad Boys. Are you familiar with the Bad Boys Detroit Pistons?
I am not. That is not something I'm familiar with.
And by the way, another great 30 for 30 documentary. I think it's called Bad Boys about the Detroit Pistons of this era. It's a great documentary. But basically, the Pistons constructed a team mostly around Isaiah Thomas, Bill Laimbeer, Chuck Daly as head coach, Rick Mahorn. And basically, Dennis Rodman played for them before he went to the Bulls. And basically, their whole gimmick at the time was, we're going to just beat the shit out of it. This was back when the NBA, like, players would elbow each other and, like, were really aggressive. And the Bad Boys were the worst of it. That was their whole thing, was that they were the toughest team and they were going to beat you around. And that actually led them to a number of NBA championships, led them to 2 back-to-back NBA championships in 89 and 90. It eventually didn't last because the Chicago Bulls sort of come in and took their thunder. But it was pretty exciting for that stretch. And then again, in sort of around 03 to 08, they actually went to 6 consecutive Eastern Conference finals behind their sort of blue-collar team that they had constructed with Ben Wallace, Rasheed Wallace, Chauncey Billups. This was the team that was involved in the Malice in the Palace. And they won the 2004 NBA Finals with that team. Ever since, they've been bad, trash, really gross, not good in any way. I mean, absolute dumpster fire, but not even like a fun dumpster fire, a mediocre dumpster fire. They did get a new arena, Little Caesars Arena, in 2018. And their mascot is named Hooper. That's what I can tell you about this. They're not, it's crazy because they're not bad enough to like get a really good draft pick, but they're not like good enough to ever win anything. So they just
sounds like every team from Detroit, like in every sport.
Yeah, I think that's pretty darn fair.
They're not bad enough to be like the worst, but they're also nowhere near good enough to be relevant or worthy of respect.
But the only way I would disagree with you is that the Pistons have a pretty cool history, both with the Bad Boys and their early 2000s success. Like, if they were good, I'd be like, Matt, you should probably root for these guys. Like, the Bad Boys are an iconic era of.
Yeah, they just it just looks like they're a team that really needs to get their swagger back. That's how I would kind of
Contracts.
Yeah.
Nothing
Just
like
a team
that.
that really needs to get their swagger back, it seems like. Oh, it's horrible. Yeah, I was just looking at that.
Yeah, they need some work. I will say, I think the current logo is boring as shit.
Let's take a
But
look.
but God, again, go back to the early 2000s logos, Matt. Take a look at this thing here. Which
That's
it's
an awesome
so
logo.
over the
That's
top.
their early 2000s logo. Very cool.
With the horse
Where
head,
they
with the
keep it at,
flames
yeah.
and the tailpipes. That's great.
That logo
That was
screams
01
this
to
is a gas
04,
station in the middle of nowhere
and they had a green
that you
variant
just like
going back
stumbled
to
upon, but
96.
it's like the coolest gas
with, like,
station
you
that
know,
you'll
the-
ever find. Like the Pistons.
Oh,
Nice.
hell
That's
yeah.
a great logo. Mhm. Or
Absolutely. You don't want to mess
their
with these
logo
players.
screams like a
That is definitely for
it's
sure.
like a third party beer
Uh,
that like from
Yeah,
like
so
a brewing
definitely
company. you've
definitely
never-
an interesting team. I
brewing
will
company in like Sri Lanka or something. That's what the early 2000s Pistons logo strikes to me. The new Pistons logo is like we just made this in 5 minutes. We took 5 minutes because the boss said we needed a new logo, and then we
Yes.
went to lunch.
Well, hang on though. Before you do that, the Pistons get a slight bit of credit from me because actually, if you look at here, and I'm sharing the screen with you, Matt, but their sort of current logo, this is the logo they had back in the 70s and 80s. And it's sort of a throwback in a way. Like it wasn't like a
I
brand
see that
new
now.
logo
Yeah,
they've
it looks
never
like it's
done
just a
before.
throwback. So to me,
It's
that's
sort
even
of like,
lazier.
there
They
is
just
history
recycled
to
an
it. So
old
I'm
logo
going to
that
give
they
them
had.
that.
That's even worse. That's like, oh, let's go to the.
And-
Were they successful with that logo? Is there some kind of history with that? Was that the Bad Boys era
That's awesome.
logo? It says that according to Wikipedia, the Bad Boys era was the 80s to 90s.
I
Okay, yeah,
clicked
so
the
that
Wikipedia page. Let
was
me see
there.
what,
Yeah,
years that was. Yeah, it was. It was the Bad Boys.
Yeah, they probably went with.
They basically.
It seems like
the
NBA.
the
they're
Flaming
very
Horse
flexible
logo.
when
They
it comes
basically
to
never had
changing their
success with it.
logos and their
So
team
I
designs,
don't
and like
know.
we
Maybe it's
mentioned on the
yours.
West Coast episode, a lot of teams usually air for like a minimalist style these days. The minimalism is very in with the style of NBA logos, and that is a very minimalist logo. It is, even though
Yep.
it was taken from their team from the '80s. It's definitely still like a very basic, very minimalistic logo. Gets the job done, tells you who they are, who the team is. Still doesn't tell me why they're called the Pistons. I'm assuming it's because of the automotive industry. Yeah, that's what I would have to. Mhm. Yeah, that's pretty standard.
Yes.
You don't have to.
Yes,
you don't have to do any
exactly.
research like with the
not
Knickerbockers.
a real A to B on that one.
Wait, about the team
Oh.
word, the name word?
Hey. Oh my God,
Really?
Matt! Would you believe we're wrong? That's not why. That's not why they're called the Piston.
Oh,
Yes, this is going to. I feel like a total idiot. This is absolutely insane.
Fort Wayne.
Because the Detroit Pistons didn't start in Detroit. They were the Fort Wayne Pistons. Indiana. The reason they were called that is because the owner,
Wow.
Fred Zollner
Somehow it
Corporation,
fits,
was a
though.
foundry
Moving to
that
Detroit,
manufactured
like ahead at
pistons
automotive.
in Indiana. How wild is that?
Yeah, that would be wacky.
Well, that's what I'm
The
saying.
Los Angeles.
Could you imagine if
Pistons?
they were like
No, then they would
they were
change
like the
their names to
Cincinnati
the Los
Pistons
Angeles
or something?
Pistols.
Like it would be
And
bizarre.
Then it would fit. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, hey. But then they'd be competing with the Bullets, the Washington Bullets, and that would be bad. Matt, we've got two teams left here in our rundown. Let's go ahead and move on over to your Cleveland Cavaliers. The Cavs, as they're often known, been in Cleveland since 1970. When did they change their? Everyone's changing the arena names because it used to be the Q and now it's the Rocket Mortgage Fieldhouse, which is terrible. an expansion team there in 1970. Were very bad for a long time until they signed a little-known player in 2003 known as LeBron James. Brought them to the finals in 07 where they lost, and then brought them to 4 consecutive finals in 15, 16, 17, and 18. They only won one of those in 2016 against the Golden State Warriors, but it was Cleveland's first major sports title since 1964. Of course, LeBron would go on to leave the team, and they would once again be gross and bad.
The Cavs. I've heard of the Cavs, of course.
Yeah. That's what I got for you on the Cleveland Cavaliers. They currently have 2 mascots. They have Moondog, who oh wow, this is a bit of a stretch. Cleveland is known worldwide as the rock and roll city due to Cleveland radio disc jockey Alan Freed, who popularized the phrase rock and roll, breaking new ground and sparking a music explosion. He called himself the Moondog, and that's where that name came from. Who is an actual dog. There's also Sir
primary colors
CC,
are
swashbuckler
wine and
character
gold.
they introduced in 2010.
No. Yeah.
Yeah,
Washington,
not the
I
worst
think,
colors.
are they more of like a burgundy? I
Very
don't even
Washington
know.
football team.
Similar shade, yeah.
I'm sure they have some weird custom name for it. I will give them credit. They are one of the few teams, I would argue, still having that over-the-top early 2000s logo design. Even with their most recent update, they still have the C with the sword through it that they use in the logo. I, for one, love the 80s Cavs logo. The word Cavs, where the V is a basket. But they've certainly
the
had a
Cleveland
number of
Cavaliers.
design. Any thoughts on the Cleveland Cavaliers?
Minus LeBron. Take LeBron out of the equation and just pretend that he never existed. How relevant to basketball are the Cleveland Cavaliers? Like just in general, are they an extremely historic franchise, or are they really just famous
today
because
or in
LeBron?
general?
Like they might as well be the Cleveland LeBrons.
No. They were no, it's funny. They were a team that was arguably good in like the late 70s, early 80s, but they were never good enough to be like written in the record books. You know what I mean? Always like early playoff losers, but pretty good in the regular seasons type teams. And really before LeBron James, I couldn't tell you a notable player they had. They certainly didn't. They never made the finals. So no, they're not really a history-rich NBA team by any stretch. They may have. So I've been reading obviously the Wikipedia pages for these teams as we do them. They may have the shortest history section of any team we've talked about, including ones that were founded.
They're a team that looks like they have a lot of window
recently.
dressing. Like they really like, even if you look at their logo, they try to dress it up with the sword going through the sea. And they have we got LeBron here, and he won some championships for us. But at the end of the day, they still play in Cleveland, and they still just have a letter C as their logo. So I think that they are a little bit of just kind of pretenders. They also they even dress themselves up with the color wine. It's like, why don't you just call it red? I don't know. Mm-hmm. But then again, I was just gushing about Cream City White as a shade for the Milwaukee Bucks. So I don't know. I don't know if the Cleveland Cavaliers are for me.
Well, maybe they're not, but I think we got to talk about
Chicago Bulls.
Do you know what team we haven't done yet, Matt? We've done all except for one. Oh, your Chicago Bulls. That's actually where the your gimmick I think might originate from. One of the best when they would do Alan Parsons Project as their
the Bulls.
How does it the opening song they would always walk out to?
Like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, on your hometown Chicago Bulls, ladies and gentlemen. God, how much
I don't
fun would
know.
that have been to do back in the day?
So starting off with the Bulls,
I don't
I
even
will
know if they still do
disclose,
that.
growing up in the 90s, as I did, uh, I think if anybody ever asked me up until like pretty much this point in my life, if anybody ever asked my favorite basketball team was, or my favorite NBA team, I would probably always tell them the Bulls, just because I was a big fan of Michael Jordan. Um, I didn't really watch basketball at all as a kid, but I did play all the basketball video games that would come out on the Super Nintendo. I just remember NBA Jam, NBA Live '95, like the ones that EA out. And I always remember playing as the Bulls partially because of Dennis Rodman, but mostly because of Michael Jordan. Um, I I always have thought really highly of the man as an athlete. I know off the field he's got his issues with like gambling and stuff like that, and other areas, but I always thought I thought of him as the best of the best. Like he was really someone who had a natural talent that he cultivated into legendary status and just basically could master his craft. Yeah, so I always was very high on the Bulls growing up.
Yeah, I mean it's a team I certainly don't have to give you the history of. It's a team people know well. They've never really changed their logo or colors or mascot ever. Um, we all know the six championships, the two three-peats. Mascot Benny the Bull as well. I would argue maybe one of the more famous NBA mascots playing at the United Center in Chicago. So I don't know what more I could tell you, Matt, about this team that you don't already know. Arguably the most. It really, if you think about the 20th century, Lakers, Celtics, Bulls, the big three, who won the vast majority of the championships in that century. The real downside to the Bulls is they're bad. They're bad now. They're not good. And unfortunately, they're not good in a bad way, meaning that a lot of infighting, a lot of issues with players and coaches, people who don't want to play there.
Just a heads up. I
just a
went
bad
to go
scene
look up the Chicago Bulls, and of course, the first thing it tells me is their current score, and they are losing their opener at home to the Atlanta Hawks, 108-70. So they're getting shellacked in the third quarter of that one. Currently, not looking great. Not a great way to start off your season, Bulls. Does not bode well, I will have to say, for your pick. But that being said, I think there is a tiny part. Sean, is there any chance that they could is there a tiny glimmer of hope that they could fix things and maybe turn things around and become the Bulls of old once again? Restore the glory days?
Again, that's the great thing about sports. The Golden State Warriors were bad for a while until they won 3 out of 4 championships in a row. I mean, anything can happen. There's no reason to think, you look at the Lakers, who had a huge run with Kareem and Magic, and then had another massive run with Shaq and Kobe. I mean, there's no reason to think they can't come back. They're in one of the, the fourth largest city in America. Certainly a major media market.
I saw on here it says the Bulls are the only NBA franchise to win multiple championships while never losing an NBA Finals series in their history.
I mean, and I am not the guy to do the who's the greatest team of all time BS, but it's hard to disagree that the Chicago Bulls of the 90s were an incredibly dominant team, the likes of which we haven't seen. I guess the Warriors a little bit. Of course, the Warriors famously beat the Bulls records, winning 73 games in a season. that may be the closest comparison, but just the outright dominance of the Chicago Bulls can't be matched. And so many great teams of that era are often forgotten. The Pacers, the Rockets, the who was I going to say? What was he? Who's the Utah Jazz? All teams who were really incredible at the time who never won a championship. The Phoenix Suns, who were stuck
with
behind
the stock market, like the Bulls, and then you also have the Chicago Bears, like Bulls. And I thought maybe there would be some kind of a connection, but I guess not. It might just be a coincidence, unless I could be wrong. Maybe unless the Bears came second, but I thought the Bears were there first. I don't know. Yeah, definitely. So on the Bulls wiki, it doesn't say anything about their connection to
the Bears were definitely there
Bears.
First.
It just says that they were granted an NBA franchise to be called the Bulls back in 1966. Yeah.
Yep. Sometimes there just isn't an interesting story.
The the third NBA franchise. They were the third NBA franchise in the city after the Chicago Stags, who existed from 46 to 50, and then the Chicago Zephyrs, or the Chicago Packers, who became the Washington Wizards. All right. Bulls, definitely something to be said there for them.
Yep.
It is.
So, Matt, it's decision time. We've gone through all 30 NBA teams, and we got to start narrowing it down. As we mentioned last week, we picked 3 Western Conference teams. I'm now going to make you choose 3 Eastern Conference teams because we got to narrow down these 15 here. And we're going to start in the Southeast, Matt. I'm going to name you 5 teams. You're going to have to pick one. Are you ready? The Atlanta Hawks, the Charlotte Hornets, the Miami Heat,
going with the Magic,
the Orlando Magic, and the Washington Wizards.
It's going to be a Magic pick.
Wow.
Yeah, it was close.
I thought you were going to go with the Heat, but I think the Magic is a good call.
At the end there was definitely the me deliberating briefly between the Heat and the Magic. But at the end of the day, the Magic strike me as because they've never won a championship, it's enticing that they just seem like they have a lot of potential and a lot of possibilities ahead.
Uh-huh.
Not necessarily. I would say it would be nice, but definitely not a.
So you don't want a team that's been very successful.
Requirement by any means.
Well, speaking of success, Matt, let's look at the Central Division here. I got 5 more teams: the Chicago Bulls, the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Detroit Pistons, the Indiana Pacers, and the Milwaukee Bucks.
Take 2 off the board. Bucks and Bills. Bulls. Bucks and Bulls. The Bucks and Bulls are the ones that are in. They're the ones that Pistons and Pacers and Cavs are gone. So
are in or out?
Make that. Between the Bulls and the Bucks, walk me through each one of them again. Where their advantages to being a fan? What's an advantage to being a fan of either one?
Milwaukee Bucks, it's a small market team, so it's not something everybody's a fan of. They're getting good now, so it's a good time to get on board with the Greek freak Giannis Antetokounmpo. The downside is the name and mascot are kind of lame. I don't think Bucks is very exciting. And at the same time, it might be a little bandwagon-y. In terms of the Chicago Bulls, obviously the rich history, I think it works in your favor that nobody's ever going to get mad at you for being a Chicago Bulls fan. I think that's very common. And I think it's a team with a rich history you can feel good about, and you obviously have a history with. The downside is they're bad and have no prospect of getting good anytime soon.
Bulls. I'm going to be the Bulls fan here. We can take the Bucks. Chicago Bulls will be the team coming out of the Central. I give the Bulls the edge because of just the previous history I do have with them, playing as them. Every time I fired up my copy NBA 95, 96 on the Super Nintendo. And yeah, just probably the first and only sports team that I ever had like merch from. Like I had a Chicago Bulls t-shirt as a kid. So I'll just go with that for the childhood nostalgia. And it seems like nostalgia is really all this franchise has from what you're telling me, which is sad. But sometimes it's all we have as well. So
These days, certainly. Uh, Matt, the Atlantic Division, I think probably your toughest decision. This is going to be agonizing because there are a couple really great teams in here.
agonizing.
The Boston Celtics, the Brooklyn
right off
Nets,
the bat,
the New York Knicks, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Toronto Raptors.
Take Celtics off the board. Take Knicks off the board. Leave the Toronto Raptors for now. Leave the Nets for sure, and leave the Sixers.
Yep.
So those are our teams we have to kind of wade through right now. Starting with the Sixers, personally, and I haven't grown roots yet into this fandom, so I'm not too deep in. I could always be plucked, but personally, my favorite team in the NBA right now, Philadelphia 76ers. I like the I like the theme song, like I shared with you there before. I like the Philly fans are just crazy. I think, like you said, though, it's all about how other people might perceive you in your fandom. If they see you with the Sixers stuff on, they might think you're a little crazy and maybe going to rob them or something. Do the Sixers have that reputation, or is that just the Eagles and Flyers? I don't know.
I don't think anyone outright hates
So
them. I just think they're seen as a bust.
When they look at you,
that's really what it is. It's really seen as a failure of a team
rebuild
these days.
Just a failed rebuild. So all right, a lot of pity. Maybe a free beer or something. Okay. All right.
They're going to feel sad.
Also,
for you.
advantage is that they're the two other. There's only one other team I know besides that are named after numbers. The 49ers. So that's a plus. It's definitely a bonus. Yeah. Why not? Why is that not a bonus? I think that's kind of intriguing.
True. If you say so.
I think,
but also there are only two
them,
teams in sports we could come up with. They could just pick numbers.
a really
Maybe
generic
that's a negative,
name, like the Philadelphia Parrots or something. Actually, that would be.
But I will also say, I hate the fact that it does drive me crazy though that the nickname is the Sixers, and they drop the 7 because you don't call like the 49ers. Oh, I guess you do call them the Niners. That also sucks though, because that's confusing. Then just be the Sixers.
All right, yeah. Let's talk about the Nets.
Whatever. I'm overthinking it.
Brooklyn. I really love the fact
what about
that
the Nets
Brooklyn has
the
a sports team. Sucks that Jersey had to lose their sports team in order for that to happen. But I love that. I happen to be a big fan of the Nets color scheme. I like the black and white kind of look that they have going. The aesthetic. It's very classic, I think, and just very, very, it fits the minimalism, right? Like, I think that their logo and their aesthetic is probably like peak minimalism. Them and the Portland Trailblazers, I think, both have extremely minimalistic logos. We didn't talk much about the recent success of the Nets. A lot of people say that they're a very, very much an up and coming team. I think we did mention that. They're easily a team on the rise. Most projections
they have some of the best players
in
the league at the moment. I mean, they're going to be incredibly good this year. Is the expectation?
Yeah, it's a team that's very easy to get high on and buy high into. I live in the area already, so that's probably a nice bonus. I think if you interviewed most people on the street here, would probably tell me they're Nets fans anyway, if they're fans of basketball at all. So yeah. That's a lot of really bonus, really good, positive things. What are some negative things about the Nets?
Well, I mean, I'll break down all three of those teams. And I think if you're looking for the safest choice, I think it's the Brooklyn Nets. Like, I don't think anyone's going to get mad at you for picking the Nets. They're going to be good. Their merch all looks good. You'll be fine with the Nets. I think the most fun, like, street cred guy high fives you pick is the Raptors, because they're a team that's kind of cool. There's the Drake, there's the Canada, there's the Raptors name. I think that could be like a fun, interesting choice that doesn't stretch into like, oh, that's crazy. Why would Matt root for them? You know, I think the 76ers personally, I think is a bad choice. And I realize you live very close to Philadelphia, but I just think it's not. I just don't see the upside to the 76ers other than your personal affection for them. Just in terms of just as like a generic team. They're kind of all over the map. They haven't really won anything.
This is a tough one.
And yeah, so that's my opinion. But I think all three would be fine. I mean, do you want to take two into the next round? I'll make an exception and let you take two into the next round if you'd like.
Eventually. Man, I might regret this.
True.
I might regret this a lot. I think I'm going to cut. I think I'm going to choose. Man.
I mean, the big thing is pick a team. You're gonna again. When that box of Los Angeles Chargers gear showed up at my house, I had a certain feeling in my
honestly,
stomach. I don't want you to have
wouldn't have that feeling.
So make sure it's a team you're going to feel good rooting about.
The issue, though, is I don't bought into the Nets as much. Like I had a chance to be a Nets fan a long time ago when I lived in New York, growing up, and I didn't. I chose the Chicago Bulls, and now I feel like I just haven't suffered enough as a fan to be like, oh, now I'm going to root for them this year, and they're going to be great. Yeah, it kind of is.
It's such a generic team.
Well, I hate that.
It's like a default team.
I don't like the name.
Where it's just sort of what is
like
there
that they play
exciting
in
about
Brooklyn,
the Brooklyn
but
Nets?
the name Nets is for a team is just so. I think honestly, if I picked any three of these teams, if I picked the Nets, I probably would regret it. Not because of their ability, because I think they're probably the most likely to have success this year. I would regret it just based on who they are as a team. And I fundamentally believe that the team you pick should be one that you stick with through thick and thin. And I'm going to say that as I pan over here to my Giants, Saints, and Eagles pennants. You should stick with these teams through thick and thin and definitely never betray them and root for other
Saints
teams
are good.
instead. That being said, I think of these three, I might have to stick with the Sixers. I'm into them. I'm into the fandom. Like I said, the Raptors just won, and I missed their win.
Fine.
I missed their big championship. So the Sixers haven't won yet. They're the one that's kind of still on the precipice. And whether they win this year, they probably won't, but maybe sometime in the near future. And now I can kind of grow with them and level with the team. So I'm going Sixers.
Well, Matt, they're going to move on to the next round, but now you have to take 6 down to 1, which is going to be quite a challenge. You've got the 76ers, the Bulls, the Magic, the Jazz, the Clippers, and the Pelicans.
Well, I was going to say.
Absolutely, Matt. I'm not hanging up this call. We're about to hit the 2-hour mark, and I'm not hanging up this call until we pick you a goddamn NBA team. Oh, actually, first of all, Matt, if I had $1 for every time on the show you pitched, let the fans do X, and then I remind you we don't have any. But I actually have an incredibly fun crossover idea because
I've got it on the calendar. I'm joining.
Word on the street is you might be joining us over on Dope Panic on Monday.
Okay.
And maybe maybe we could use some outside help
Yeah,
to help pick you a
definitely.
team. And when I think
These
of
are
basketball,
ball experts.
NBA super
They know
fans,
b-ball.
I
up and
think
down,
of Colby and
backwards
Dan.
and forwards. Always. That's why they never play game nights with us anymore. They're too busy being basketball.
I mean, they're always
stars.
out on the streets, you know? And as two
They're just students.
well,
of
and
the
as
game.
two people who I'm pretty sure don't have NBA teams, they'll be great neutral observers to help us choose. They are, Matt. And so, wow. We made everyone listen to 2 hours of us debate, and we're not picking a team.
It's going to
and we're
be
going to make them
beneficial
listen
in the
to a
end, 'cause
different
maybe they'll
podcast to
discover,
find out.
Don't panic, and it'll become their new
So
favorite
rude.
podcast.
Well, what I will promise, folks, what I will do is that episode of Don't Panic we tape on Monday, I will put it in the Up for Debate feed, so you won't have to go over to